knowledge there. Anyway, let me read
Okay.
our opening prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Amen.
And David, if you would care to read your opening prayer.
Thank you. I'm opening the poem. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if any of you were able to see the eclipse of the moon on Monday night, but it was gorgeous. It was one of the best I've seen. The sky was beautiful. The moon was pretty dark. It's not as dark as the darkest eclipse I've seen. And that eclipse was on December the 30th, 1963. And the moon was, when the moon was in total eclipse, it simply disappeared. I couldn't find it at all. It was that dark. Now, Thomas Hardy wrote a poem called At a Lunar Eclipse. He saw an eclipse in London in 1902, and he wrote the poem a year later. And it is so appropriate for today. If we think about the war in Ukraine and compare that and other political issues going on in the world to the beauty and pensiveness of the night sky, this poem is very appropriate, I think. Thy shadow, earth, from pole to central sea, now steals along the moon's meek shine, in even monochrome and curving line of imperturbable serenity. How shall I link such sun-cast symmetry with the torn troubled form I know as thine? That profile placid as a brow divine with continents of moil and misery. And can immense mortality but throw so small a shade of heaven's high human scheme be hemmed within the coasts yon arc implies? Is such the stellar gauge of earthly show, nation at war with nation, heroes, brains that team, heroes and women fairer than the skies. Thank you, Marty, and back to you.
Thank you. Thomas Hardy, if people have not read Tess of the D'Urbervilles,
Oh, yeah.
I highly recommend it. And also, he wrote another story called Two on a Tower. And the tower
I've
is
read
an
them both,
observatory. Yes. And that one is also, he's always involved in romance novels, okay? He was far
Marty,
better.
I remember I was at an astronomy meeting many decades ago, and one of the people was giving a paper on Two on a Tower.
Oh.
And he started to summarize the story. And as he was summarizing it, his time ran out, and the moderator told him that he had to end. The moderator was almost mugged by the audience. They said, "Oh no, we have to hear the end of this." It was so interesting. And after that, I read the book. It's just beautiful.
It is a good
Tessa
story.
of the D'Urbervilles is such a classic.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of you have not read that, I very strongly recommend it.
Thank you, David.
By Thomas Hardy.
Okay. Yeah, I want to get started because some of the people who have signed on have to leave very shortly. So, yes, Don.
I have a request while we're talking about literature. I'm about to send out a short story, and I've had a fairly good success with publishing. But this one is a Jewish theme, and I'm looking for a proofreader who's Jewish before I send it out. I only have a few days. So if anybody's interested, my email is it's on the temple website.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
David is willing to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And also Rabbi Miri.
Miri is also.
So you have two people who can help you with that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Please check your chat, because if I want to say something personal, that's the avenue. I mean, not just me, but if someone wants to send a message. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, let's get started. We're on Exodus 25, verse 31.
I need a break.
And so if someone is here who likes to read,
Yeah,
all
I'll
right,
read
I can get us started.
Marty, see if you
Well,
can
I'm
check.
ready.
Exodus
Marty.
25, verse 31. You shall
25.
make a
Okay, Marty, would you
lampstand
like
of
me
pure
to?
gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its base and its shaft, its cups, calyxes, and petals shall be of one piece. 6 branches shall issue from its sides, 3 branches from one side of the lampstand, and 3 branches from the other side of the lampstand. On one branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like the other side of the lampstand. On one branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like I just read that. On one branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. And on the next branch there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. So for all 6 branches issuing from the the 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself there shall be 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. A calyx, one piece with it under a pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the second branch of the second pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the last pair of branches, so for all 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. Their calyxes and their stems shall be one piece with it, the whole of it a single hammered piece of gold. Make it 7 lamps. The lamps shall be so mounted as to give the light on its front side, and its tongues and fire pans of pure gold. It shall be made with all these furnishings out of a talent of pure gold. Note well and follow the patterns for them that are being shown to you on the mountain. It's a lot of words. Yes, David.
I think you're seeing me a little bit better now because you saw my hand go up.
Okay.
But anyway, Marty, I think that if all of the instructions to build a house or build an observatory or build anything were done as clearly as the instructions to build this candelabra are, I think that I'd be able to put things together better. I was very impressed with the clarity of these instructions.
Yes, that is very true. It's one of the rare times that everything is in specific detail.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comment? Yes, Gail.
Well, Friedman has an interesting remark. He says, and this is actually at 26:1, that's where we'll be.
Sure.
Says, no one has ever figured out how the tabernacle is put together.
Right.
The components are here, but the text does not say how they are put together. So if you're an engineer, something's lacking here in these structures.
We're going to come up with this because it's a very interesting compilation. You have to read all the way through this to get the final answers. Okay, I'm not going to say more than that. But there are certain areas that are very detailed and others that are not. And obviously, different commentators have come up with different opinions as to what could have been the idea behind the statement. Okay, yes, Don.
Yeah, I find the very last line really interesting because there's this careful verbal description of how to construct the candelabra, and then at the end it says,
Yes, honey, my hearing aids are not here yet, and I can't hear. I just wanted to send love, and I will try my best, okay? Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, so the long verbal description, very carefully worded, and at the end it says, which was showed in the mount. And all of a sudden you realize it must have been an actual blueprint of some sort, besides the words describing the construction. And it comes right at the end, and I'm wondering what was actually showed on the mount.
It's okay, Michael, go ahead. If you're answering that question, sure.
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know, Don.
I need to bring something else up if Don is finished.
I'm finished, yeah. I'm just asking.
Okay, go ahead, Michael, and then we can come back to both.
Yeah, okay, so I don't want to go off somewhere else, but I'm highly compelled to repeat something that I mentioned last week based on what you just read, Marty. And that is this detail. Talk about detail. It's a remarkable detail, what you just read. But there's nothing at all that I ever heard about the detail of making a musical instrument. So I was highly compelled to say that based on what you were reading. So I didn't want to go far afield, but I just had to say that.
That is very important. There are certain areas that the details are lacking, and here there's a lot of detail. However, there's one thing that we haven't mentioned: the height of the candelabra. It's absent. That comes later. That comes later in our history. But in these directions, the actual height does not occur. And I'm reading this out of Plout, his commentary about the lampstand, and it says the height of the candelabra of the candelabrum is not stated. The Talmud had a tradition that it was 18 handbreadths, about 52 inches or 132 centimeters tall. Okay, and it burned. I won't go into the other because the rest of it, there's much more that will come up in our reading. But it's a very interesting thing that it was added much later.
Okay.
Yes, Ruth Ann.
Yeah, it almost seems to me about all this stuff and all this detail and everything. I mean, God said, to create this, and God's going to dwell there. So it's like, okay, God's giving Moses, who's probably not an artist, like Marcia, instructions on the kind of art that God wants in this particular place that he lives. And the fact that that there's no height, maybe God just assumes that it's going to be, that they're going to know a lampstand is always so high. I mean, in that given day, because it was being used for a certain purpose. But it really seems like that's the whole thing, that, God wants this kind of art, not that kind of art. So he better make it very specific. Otherwise, he's not going to like it.
Well, yes, Gail.
Okay.
Very good, Ruth Ann.
Okay, Freeman again. Why does it matter whether the tabernacle is 8 by 20 or 10 by 30? because 8 by 20 cubits and 10 cubits high is the size of the space under the wings of the cherubs in the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem. So that's why some of these measurements are what they are, because
Yes.
they're reflective of what's going on in the temple. So
that is I have that too in Plow.
yeah.
However, you see, you guys inspire a lot of thinking. And why is maybe the candelabra is not the focal point. Maybe it's light.
Mhm.
Okay. And because many of the things, what are the, what did God say that, in the beginning, what were his early words? Let there be light. And so, and so maybe this is to herald a new beginning. We have read about many new beginnings in all of the books in Genesis, and we've discussed it when we read the first portion of Exodus. But maybe this is to allow the people to see that all the time in their lives, the light represents a new beginning. I see the light is a common expression. Okay. Yes, Michael, go ahead. Yes, Michael.
The great, I had it, I was muted, Marty, so I took.
Oh, okay.
The great pianist, Liberace, one of his vocal points was with a candelabra on his piano.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it was designed, you kind of struck pardon the expression, you struck a chord in me when you said the vocal point. And
Mhm.
so I quickly thought of that. And so he did that as part of his show, along with his outfits and all that crazy stuff. But it was like as a vocal point. It really, I think it symbolized the piano. It symbolized the piano. He could think of other things, and he may have thought of something else, but I just thought I found that interesting to bring up.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, David.
Well, one thing that I'm wondering about the lack of instructions on the height. First of all, the temple, the fixed, unmovable temple in Jerusalem is not going to be built for a long, long time, till the time of King Solomon. But the other thing is that this is going to be a portable tabernacle. Is it possible that these instructions deliberately leave out the height so that they can choose a height that's easily carryable and portable, while the temple is going to be transportable as it was designed to be?
Yeah, that's a very good common sense approach to this. Very good.
Thanks.
Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I'll start from the last comment of David, in which you're absolutely right, because everything that's described how should you make the tabernacle is depicted how do you going to schlep it, because you have the handles and you have
Yes.
this and you have the tent folds, and you're absolutely right. It couldn't be, I don't know how big, because they have to carry it. Also, you can say they didn't have enough gold to make it bigger, but that's absolutely right. Everything needed to be portable. And I said to you before, how do we know exactly how the menorah was looked like? We know from the Romans when they carved it on their arch of when Titus comes into Rome, they used to celebrate their winning of the war, carving the story on top of the arch. So if you go to Rome and by the Colosseum, you can see that arch. And in the arch, you see two people carrying the menorah. We know how the menorah looks like. And I'm going to say it again, Michael, if you can see now, it's six thingies and one more that holds. It's not 8 like on Hanukkah. On the other hand, Hanukkah is called in Hebrew Chag Aurim, the holiday of light. And that's emphasized, as you said, more than the war that happened with the Maccabees and how they won. So that's one thing. Now to Ruth Ann. Are you there? I don't know. Ruth Ann said, to make all these things, you have to be like Marsha, who's an artist. You cannot just ask anyone to do it. So an artist is called to do everything in there. His name was Uri ben Betzalel. Uri, the son of Betzalel. Do you know the name of the art school in Jerusalem?
Yes. Yes, we
It's
discussed.
Betzalel.
Yes.
It's Betzalel. And what I love as an artist is that it says because he had the sense, ruach, he had the soul of Elohim, of God. So he had the talent to do it. So you can see how all these pieces fall together. And as David said, it was a focal point. It's what's in the front, it is the focal point. What I don't know is why did they have to have it one piece and not just having each piece put together, which would have been much easier. This is one piece of gold. And Marty, I just appreciate so much how you said the central piece is enlightenment. It's light. It's what attracts. That's a beautiful explanation. And I now have a question to the group. Where else did we find God-given very specific instructions? And my hint is that it's in Bereshit, in Genesis. Dun, 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 dun,
Okay, people, what do you think?
Do you remember when the ark was built? There are measurements there.
Yes.
Of this is this, and this is that, and this is that. And usually there is a person, when I teach this, they said, it cannot be in this size that they put so many animals. Okay. But we saw that again.
Yes.
And what everyone has said is just wonderful.
Very good. Yes, Michael.
What occurred to me right now is that the all these specific building instructions of building the tabernacle, possibly, I don't know, but it could be directed towards the construction of the tabernacle was given these instructions to create strength and durability because it's designed to be portable. And when you're moving things around, they may break down over time, and the building that is built, it creates a strength possibly in keeping it in good shape when moved from one location to another.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if it was attached, some pieces could fall. You're absolutely right. Didn't think about it. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, I was going to say something about that also, because in the construction process, if you make all of the arms of a candelabra individually, you can lose a piece, you can break a piece very easily where the seam is. And so you want to be very careful. Gold is also fairly pliable, and so it bends. Okay, with the gold, if it's pure gold, you have to be very careful with it. It's durable because the way gold is structured atomically, it's not going to tarnish like silver or other. And so gold also would be something that's everlasting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, have
And
a
so
safe,
it's highly symbolic. So not only the candelabra, you have something that's everlasting and from which light is emitted. Okay.
okay, so have a safe and healthy weekend, everybody. I've got.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you,
Be
thank
good.
you, Marty.
Hope everything is okay.
Yeah, it will be. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. But so here we're coming back to the story of light. And also that is one of the major key focuses in the story of Hanukkah. Why do we have the kindling of the oil lamps, and they last 8 days? It's the miracle of light. So
Yes.
and it symbols a rebirth of the Jewish nation as well. Yes, Michael. I'm sorry, Don. I apologize.
No problem. I'd like to point out, I've been studying petroglyphs worldwide for about 30 years, and the 7-branch candelabra is a petroglyph icon that appears in every petroglyph wall in the world. I mean, it's the same whether you go to Australia or Ireland or Iraq, even in Israel. And these images go back 35,000 years.
Yes, in Syria too. That's right.
Syria, even in Arizona, you get the 7-branch candelabra and petroglyph wall. And so the candelabra and the other image that's common to all these worldwide is what's called the squatter man. It looks like a man with arms out like that, and legs are also spread out in the same manner. So there's a group of people who study this, and the consensus of the most senior scientists are that these are images that appeared in the sky during periods of intense solar activity, plasma formation. So the theme of light and the fact that the 7-branch candelabra is common to scores of countries around the world going back hundreds or tens of thousands of years, to me does kind of fit into the Jewish origins as well, because of this period. You know, we're going back far enough for that to be common. That's a big digression.
Okay.
I thought I would mention it.
Okay. I would be a little more down to earth. I would say the rays of light that come between the clouds on certain days. You know, you see it comes in a way like the light that would be emitted from multiple candles. You know, it's not the same, but and I have to say that it's more sophisticated way of looking at different ideas in science and like that. It adds to the discussion, but I have to also put it in context of time. Back then, they didn't really see solar flares. They didn't even know they existed. And nobody has really written about solar flares until much, much later, after the telescope is invented.
But we're talking serious solar flares where everybody would have seen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're periodic. They're about every 12,000 years or 6 to 12,000 years. They kind of, you can't miss them.
Okay. Anyway,
And then let me ask you, does it look very much like our menorah of seven? Why
seven
can't I
branches.
remember the word?
Seven
Yes?
branches. Yep, they all have 7 branches.
but now there is a Native American tribe that Gail and I are familiar with, the Hopi, and a lot of their statements about their way of life are, you can find a very close relationship with many of the readings we have in Torah. And one of the old comments about the Hopi is that they may have represented of the lost tribe. We don't know. The same thing has been said about the Hamish, the people of the Hamish Pueblo. Okay, and we don't know if it's just a similarity, because many times these symbols mean different things in different cultures. What comes to mind is the swastika. We always associate it with Nazism, but Buddhists know that the swastika sign is on many Buddhas. Doesn't mean they're Nazis, it means it's a symbol of everlasting life. So there are different ways of looking at things. Yes, David.
The swastika also in ancient Roman times
Yes.
represented a specific comet in the night sky with multiple tails. And so it's a very, very old and ancient symbol.
Yes. We also see it in Chinese symbols, and we also see it in Egyptian symbols. But it has a different meaning in each culture. So the trick is that we have to know if it's our reading into it, it's really not anthropomorphizing, but it's our own cultural interpretation of things, or did they mean the same thing intentionally by these other groups? We don't know for sure, but it is an interesting subject, John. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comments about what we have read? We're going to come back to the Ner Tamid as we read on, because all of the instructions aren't given at once. We go back and forth in all of these descriptions. So we are now at verse 20. Well, it's chapter 26, verse 1.
Okay, I'd be happy to read if you want.
Please, David, please.
Okay, moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet, with cherubim, the work of the skillful workman, shalt thou make them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall have one measure. 5 curtains shall be coupled together, one to another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another. And thou shalt make loops of blue upon the edge of the one curtain that is outermost in the first set, and likewise shalt thou make on the edge of the curtain that is outmost on the second set. 50 loops shalt thou make on the one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make at the edge of the curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite one to another. And thou shalt make 50 clasps of gold, and couple the curtains one to another with the clasps, so the tabernacle may be one whole. And thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains shalt thou make them. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. And 11 curtains shall have one measure. And thou shalt couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shalt double over the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tent. And thou shalt make 50 loops on the edge of the one curtain that is outmost in the first set, and 50 loops upon the edge of the curtain which is outmost in the second set. And thou shalt make 50 clasps of brass, and put the class into the loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be one. And as for the overhanging part that remaineth of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remaineth over shall hang over the back of the tabernacle. And the cubit on the one side, and the cubit on the other side of that which remaineth over in the length of the curtains of the tent shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and on that side to cover it. And thou shalt make a covering for the tent of ram's skins, dyed red, and a covering of seal skins above.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone know the another name for goat's hair? Goats, if it's woven from goat's hair. Guys, when was the last time you bought a mohair suit? It's made from goat hair. Okay. It's a very formal type of suit.
Very expensive.
Yes. So just to let you know about that little tidbit. So now what is unique about mohair suits? They shimmer a little bit in the light. It's not a matte, it's not a matte or a dull finish. Okay. It's more of a shimmering effect. And we've spoken about seal skins, dolphin skins. Okay, Tahash comes up several times. And it is, and we've commented about that before. Any other statements about things? Are you noticing something in the description here? Again, it's very detailed. And we already spoke about the artisans that it would take. Here you now have first you have to shear the hair off the goat. Then you also have to make the linen from it. You have to, or mohair, if you will. And then you have to dye it certain ways. It has to be sewn certain ways, measured certain ways. This is, if you notice, just in between the lampstand and the fabrics, it's going to require a lot of different trades, a lot of different hand craftsmanship. It's going to require a community. We've lost that. Somewhere along the way, we stopped building our places of worship with our own two hands as a community. And we've relied on currency to purchase, for purchase power, the talents of others. But we have forgotten that we have to get involved in these things ourselves. We hire a painter, but it's a different feeling when you paint it yourself. We can buy curtains, but it's a different feeling when you make those curtains yourself. And older individuals who witnessed their grandmothers or themselves making clothing, there was a certain feeling that the crafter who made the clothing that you wore, but it also made a closer bond between generations.
Finally.
Okay, so
Right.
the same thing is holding true with all of these other craftsmen. It's for all generations to remember. But unfortunately, we have replaced all of this with the power of the dollar. Yes, Don.
You know,
Don,
Marty,
excuse me. Helene usually has to go shortly.
yeah,
So
sure.
I'm
Go ahead.
going to let her and then you.
Sure.
Yes, Helene.
Is that okay, Don? You
Oh,
can-
of course, Elaine, yeah. Usually what you say is better than what I say anyway.
We have, I believe, those of us who celebrate with children and expect certain behavior from them at the ceremony, and who recall the past, and who follow the directions exactly. No fooling around. You do it this way. This is how we do it. That's what it's all about. Each society does their own thing. But why do we do it the way we do it? Why? And you want light? The light in the eyes of the children who find the hidden masa is enough to light up a whole house. So I'm once again going back to the reason we do things is to pass on, as the Torah said, the generations is where it all is, and every culture has it. We need to continue our culture as it has always been. And praise God, it will always be.
Very well stated, Helene. Very well stated. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, Don.
I can really relate to what you just said, Marty. When I was starting my working life after I got out of the military, I was in England. I had a wife and an infant son, and the only thing I could afford to live in was a 120-year-old condemned cottage with no running water and no electricity and no furnishings. And so I had to do it all myself. So I spent 8 years rebuilding that house, nights and weekends, and they, built the furniture. My wife made everybody's clothing. So it was all, there was no choice but to do it all. And so ever since then, and I still have some of those tools, I can really relate to what you just said about we've lost the connection to doing things with our own hands. And I miss that very much. It's not the same to go down on Lowe's now and buy something already built. The satisfaction of doing it yourself just can't be replaced. So I can really appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you, Don. I think Grace wanted to say something too.
Good morning, everyone. Hi. So Angora goat? An Angora
don't
goat?
know.
Is it possible that, because I don't know diddly squat. I've had goats as companions for my horse. I had two little pygmy goats that are a sister and brother, and they were a lot of fun. But I couldn't imagine wearing clothing from them. So that's a new concept for me. But I heard the story of what we just read about the community. Again, it's inspiring to work together, right? Inspiring to
Yes.
work together with all these trades and skills. And so I'm glad to be here. Good morning, and
Good morning.
Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Yeah, very good, Grace. Yes. The community is coming first here before the individual. There will be other times in Torah where the individual comes before the community, but here we're building a community. Yes, Gail.
Yes, I'm remembering when we had our rummage sales at the temple, and I don't know how involved you got, Marty, but the work was enormous. It went on many separate days when we were
Yes.
collecting and setting up and everything. And I happened to be the chairman of both events. God bless me. And the best thing about those two events was the sense of community and working together, and everyone was just having a blast. But we worked like dogs, I'm telling you. But everyone has commented to this day about what a sense of community it brought us, because we really were, I mean, everyone was just working their hearts out.
That's one of the things that think about it, how and here you can also see the importance of a family. Each one has different responsibilities, but they have to work together to make it work. It doesn't happen by itself. And each has to contribute, okay? Give, serve each other. Okay, when we talk about serving, it doesn't mean servants like in the negative way. It means giving of each other for something that is bigger and better. Yes, Gail.
One last thing. When you go into our synagogue and you go into the big room, on the east wall is a huge needlepoint project that a lot of women did. And they're all artists. I don't know, Marcia, did you work on that or not? No, you're muted. I can't.
Marcia, you're muted.
And Toby did
Marcia, we missed everything you said. You're muted.
Toby did the stained glass windows. So we do have artists who have contributed to the building.
Yes, we do. We do. And each in his or her way. And but putting it all together, it doesn't mean that one artisan knows it all. Okay. Rabbi Mary brought up Bezalel, very important, because his craftsmanship was considered one of the best of that day in the Jewish community. And so we're going to read more about him as his name is introduced to us. And it's very, very important to think of it when you have a school of art. Think about all the different types of artwork you have seen throughout your life. And you then realize that it's not just painting. It's not just charcoal. It's different sculpture, different textures, okay? Things you can see and touch, okay? It becomes very, very important. And all of these involve an appeal to our human senses that we will eventually wind up using the term beautiful. or pleasing to the eye. So we're being given instructions not to build something, but to build a community and to recognize the importance of each one from the top to the bottom. Yes, Marcia, but Marcia, you have to be sure you're unmuted.
Well, we might say that this time of the building was beginning of a community, not individual people doing things. So maybe that was the beginning.
It's very possible, very possible.
And you're absolutely right. You know, Marcia, we're going to see how each part of the tabernacle was given to a tribe, a group of people, and all together were the congregation. Because you're absolutely right, Marty. There are things you cannot, even if you want, that you cannot unless you have support of community. And
by the way, 5 years ago, we discussed the names of all of the different generations that we in the book of Genesis. And we commented about the names. Okay, we usually, in the past, we had just read through that. And each one of those names represented an individual that was well known for something. And we find that some were involved in sailing, some were merchants, some were, they worked with iron, some worked with copper. That's what the names imply. So this is something that is, it dovetails into what we're reading here, dovetails into what we read in Genesis. Okay, all of this, each one has his or her special ability. Okay, in Judaism, say that special ability is granted by God. It's a gift from God. So if that is the case, that's another reason why everyone's gift is important. And you can't survive. But money, we have placed so much emphasis on money that now when a temple is built, it's the larger donors that get the recognition and get the best seats in the congregation, who are recognized for the aliyahs. Okay, everything is centered around money. I think we've lost something. I'm going to hop off my bandstand right now. So anyway, so now we've discussed
David.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. I was looking down. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks everybody. I'm in and out a little bit today because our daughter, son-in-law, granddaughter, and her fiance are visiting this weekend.
Oh, very
and
nice.
They wanted me specifically to say hello to everyone, and even more specifically to Marty.
Well, thanks, and wish well. We'll be in touch. Nanette and family, we want to meet the rest of her family too. Sure.
Okay.
Sounds
okay,
good.
Great. Thanks, Marty. What I wanted to say, and I may have missed something, but when I got back, you were talking about things that are beautiful. And of course, it reminds me of, I think it's Harriet Beecher Stowe, America the Beautiful. When she tried to get it published, the editor said, you have to change the word. Beautiful is a stupid word. And she kept on saying that when I was up on top of Pikes Peak, looking out, the only word that could come to my mind was beautiful. And so they left the word in. And it's now one of the most intriguing and, of course, beautiful pieces of poetry ever written in the United States.
Very good. Very good.
David, can you, I chat, but can you send me your email, please?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Something that you just said reminded me something. She also lived in a very humble home.
Yeah.
She lived in Connecticut, I think. And her neighbor, okay, was Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain.
Oh, no kidding. Well, there is one interesting gal, I'll tell you.
We were
I'll
in
tell you,
both of
but
those homes. They're on a tour. They're right next to each other. And fascinating structures. Mark Twain was very elaborate, very eclectic, and hers was very humble. It tells you something about the personalities. Think about the writings of these individuals, and it is expressed in their home life too. Fascinating,
yeah.
fascinating background. So I just had, you reminded me of that, and so I just had to add that in. And please, if other people have interesting stories like this, add them to the discussion, because it shows that one statement has many different ramifications, and that's what gives greater depth to what we're covering in our discussions of Torah. So thank you, David. Any other comment? Yes, go ahead, Rabbi Mary.
A quick one. When we do a mitzvah, there is a saying, Hidur mitzvah. And going back to David, is beautifying the mitzvah. Like, for example, on Shabbat, you put a tablecloth, if you do, you put a tablecloth and the best dishes, etc., to beautify the mitzvah of Shabbat. So whatever we have here was probably a source to do that. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very good. Thank you. Well, let's move on. And now we're going to move from cloth work, millinery, to woodwork. So verse 26. It's chapter 26, verse 26. If somebody would care to read.
Well, I could read again.
Go ahead, David.
Okay. And thou shalt make bars of acacia wood. Here we get back to the acacia. Bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the tabernacle for the hinder part westward, and the middle bar in the midst of the boards, which shall pass through from end to end. And thou shalt overlay the boards with gold, and make the rings of gold for holders for the bars. And thou shalt overlay the bars with gold. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which has been shown there in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twisted linen, with cherubim, the work of the skillful workman shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of acacia overlaid with gold, their hooks being of gold, with 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang out the veil under the clasp, and shalt bring in thither within the veil of the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And thou shalt put the ark cover upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And thou shalt set the table without the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And thou shalt put the table on the north side, and thou shalt make a screen for the door of the tent of blue, of purple, and of scarlet, of fine twisted linen, and the work of the weaver in colors. And thou shalt make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia, and overlay them with gold. Their books shall be of gold, and thou shalt cast 5 sockets of brass for them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, any comments?
Marty,
Yes,
yeah, I
ma'am.
would like just to say, guys, when I taught this, the building of the temple, it's so convoluted, and I'm a visual person. I went to Google and to YouTube, and on YouTube you can see the entire the yard and the pieces and the menorah and everything, and that's very helpful to understand what the whole thing is about. But it's there, so you can look at it.
Yes, there are a lot of images and videos available. I know in years past, someone else used to bring some drawings of these things, but you'll also notice that the different artists take their own liberty, and you'll see different drawings, because there are a lot of empty spaces that have to be filled in by the artist. Yes, please, Marcia.
Well, it's funny that reading this, it makes me think why I chose those 3 colors for all the taluses, a lot of the taluses I made. I don't know. I said, this will represent Judaism. So putting it on, you're a part of it more. And I never thought of it until I see it right there, what it meant. And so it's just a personal thing that those colors had to be used to make talits.
Yes,
Thanks.
and that's going to come up again when we go into that. So it's not only in the scripture, okay, that the people will be entering into the colors that are there, but they will be wearing variations of those same colors. And it's fascinating as to how this all winds up being pieced together. And so, any other comments about this? Okay. Shall we read on? I guess we're up to verse 36. David, do you want to read that, or
Sure, except that aren't we now on
verse 36?
36? I get a little
And
confused
we'll
here.
finish, and then it's verse 36 and 37.
36 and 37. Let me see. I'm a little bit.
Oh, no, you did read that. You did read that.
36.
And
Okay.
we're now on,
Chapter 27.
that's right, we're on 27:1, and I apologize,
27:1.
27:1.
Okay, let me try that. Okay. And thou shalt make the altar of acacia wood. I hope that you find enough acacia wood there, because they're using it for almost everything. Okay, and thou shalt make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the four corners thereof. The horns thereof shall be of one piece with it, and thou
Excuse
shalt
me,
overlay
David.
it with brass.
David, do you have something else, other electronic equipment running that may have some sound with it?
No,
Okay, if anyone else has a phone or a radio or anything else, it may be interfering with the sound. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, Mary, could you translate the word horns in Hebrew, please?
Which one?
Okay,
Verse 1?
in verse 1, it's talking about, and you shall make its horns in the second verse, and you shall make its horns. Could you just translate that from the Hebrew, please?
So you want one or two or both?
Verse 2.
Verse 2,
Two, okay.
and you shall,
And you make karnotav. The translation I'll have is horns. Not the horns of Moshe, those were light, but really horns. Horns like a shofar or something that looks like that.
oh,
Like,
oh,
right. Now, and we encounter those later on. I don't want to get into that, but they have a very specific role into holding something that's right, that
Right.
it's holy.
right,
Yeah. And I think it has to do again with the schlepping, as David talks about. You know, to lift it without touching other stuff, to carry. I suppose that that's what it is, unless they go already far away. And Gail, you know very well, you know about the story that Friedman tells about how these things were written.
Right.
So he knows, right. So he knows in the future what will be the roles. So these things have been put here since we talk about oral tradition.
Right.
And that's what I think it is, but it is horns.
So you think it's actually real horns that were on the altar? Actual
I
horns?
don't know if it could be real horns or it could be two sticks that look like horns. Because if you put two things together that go up, you would say, oh, these are like horns.
Okay, and they're going to plate it with bronze. So it says.
And it's called Karnot HaMizbeach. The places that they sacrifice, they used to put these in front of the place that they sacrifice.
Also,
That's my understanding.
in Plout, he talks of the horns, he speaks of the horns as a symbol of strength.
Could be.
I just don't know. But yes, David.
yeah, I need to make a correction on the story I told you. Harriet Beecher Stowe, I got that wrong. She is not the author of America the Beautiful. The author is Catherine Lee Bates, who lived in Massachusetts. And she was the one that wrote the song. And I want to apologize that I made a mistake there.
But that's okay. That's okay. I just hope that the house that she lived in was never converted into a hotel. Anyway.
I just Googled it, and it's a beautiful home.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous.
Staircase is unbelievably gorgeous.
Any other comments? Thank you, David and Gail. Any other comments about the horns that Gail wanted that? There's one other comment here. The word Karen which I guess is used for horn. Is that right, Mary? Karen?
Yes, and for lightning, as we said with Moshe, the mistake was that his
Yeah.
face was Karan, lighten, and people translate it as horns.
And also, just as an aside, there is a fund, the Karen Kayemet, and it that has been created. And also the another comment on it, that the holding onto the horns provided temporary protection to a refugee from justice, which is also interesting. I did not know those two things. So, okay. Any other questions about the horns? Okay. So we have them, and they're pretty big horns.
Yeah.
And Don, I'm surprised you didn't say anything that maybe they're antennas for a radio.
No, I'm not going to say that, but I will point out that at the same time that Moses directed during their encampments that around the camps that tall poles with brass tops were erected. I haven't found the chapter and verse right this second, but it's there. And this protected the Israelis from lightning. So, and that's documented. I mean, that was the first recorded lightning arrestor in the Bible, I think. And so I have no doubt that at this time that there was a ground current induced in that area, and that this the tabernacle and the ark were, but because of their construction, could channel currents to the cherubim and actually roast sacrifices that you put between the two horns. It's so obvious to me, but nobody ever talks about that. That's why I didn't say it.
Good or done. No, it's possible. Okay. I had all kinds of images flash through my mind when you said that, Don. Anyway, I forgot to mention something about the fabric that we had to make a curtain separating the Holy of Holies from the holy area. And one of the things, the curtain in the ark, when we open the ark, there's always a curtain that we have to open. The same word in Hebrew, parashet or parashet, is also used in other religions, not just in Judaism, but in other religions too, where there is a curtain or veil covering the opening to the holiest site. So parashet, Hebrew parashet, has entered into universal language. So just as a little side comment.
Okay, the word Marty is parochet.
Parochet, okay.
Parochet, yeah, and your CH is because of the ch, parochet. Yes,
okay.
You're absolutely right.
So thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. I anglicized that. Anyway, and also made it French. And Any other comments about all of the different things we've been reading here? Okay, and I don't see any hands. So David, would you like to read on starting with verse 3 and go through verse 8.
Okay, and thou shalt make its pots to take away its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its flesh hooks, and its fire pans. All the vessels thereof thou shalt make of brass, and thou shalt make for it a grating of network of brass, and upon the net shalt thou make 4 brazen rings in the 4 corners thereof. And thou shalt put it under the ledge round the altar beneath, and the net may reach halfway up to the altar. And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of acacia wood, and overlay them with brass. And the staves shall be put into the rings, and the staves shall be upon the 2 sides of the altar and bearing it. Hollow with planks shalt thou make it, as it hath been shown here in the mount, so shall they make it.
Okay, any other comments? Marcia, if it's your phone, if you need to take the call, could you mute yourself?
Yes, I,
Okay, thank you. Anyway, any comments?
Marty,
Yes.
Marty, just a comment that comes to me metaphorically. And I'm thinking about it. I didn't think about it before, but we see that there are levels that come until you come to the Holy of Holies. If we think about our lives, that we want to get to the higher level, it's slowly, it has steps. And in Hasidic thought, actually,
Yes.
they don't talk about this, but they talk about a ladder that you go
Yes.
from step to step. And then we can think about Jacob that saw those steps when the angels came up and down. But I think that that's I'm not going to say it's a nice thought because I thought about it, but that occurred to me.
It's a good analogy. Yes, I think it allows us to picture what is going on here. Some of us have been in temples with a central area that is dedicated as the ark, for the ark, and it is there are under a for want of any other term, I'm going to say chuppah, and you have steps leading up to that platform where the ark is located. And the rabbi doesn't stand at the top. He stands at the floor level, many times leading the prayer service, but also his sermon or her sermon. And the reason I think is this very hierarchy that no one wants to stand above the level of the Torah, or God. This reminds me of another story that we read about in the book of Genesis. Which story is this? Oh, come on now. If you want to build a structure going to heaven, do you remember which story this is and what happens?
Tower of Babel?
Babel, very
The
good.
baby, yeah.
So you can see how these stories can be interwoven. Ideas, that people can only come up to a certain level, leaders can only come up to a certain level, Moses can come up to a certain level. So it's a very important it's not just hierarchy,
Yeah.
but it's steps, as Mary points out, in many different ways. Yes, please, Gail.
You were talking about Jacob's ladder and the angels going up and down. The symbolism to me in that is there's no beginning and no end.
Ah, the
That's
very good
very
one.
nice.
Very
Very
nice.
nice. And they come from underneath up. It's not that they come from high to low.
Going
So
up
you
and
have to
down.
climb. Yeah. The other thing is, if you will look at your temple, your synagogue, not only yours, probably most. So let's see what happens, how until we come to the Torah, which is the Holy of Holies. It's you open the ark, then you move the curtains, then you undress the Torah
Yes.
until we get to the Torah itself. So it doesn't go like that. Preparing ourselves to that.
Very, very interesting. Yes, Gail.
Reminds me, I was sitting with, this is many years ago, I was sitting at temple on a Friday night service, and two non-Jewish people were sitting next to me who had never been in a Jewish synagogue before. And when the ark was opened and they saw the two Torahs, there was this gasp like, oh, because they're beautiful and, the light is on them and all, but they both of them just gasped. I mean, very audible.
Yes. I can understand. For many of us, what Gail just mentioned, think of your very first experience with that. It was awe-inspiring. Yes. Okay. Shall we go ahead and read on, David?
Yes.
Verse 9.
Verse 9. Okay. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle. Boy, they're not leaving anything out. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side, southward, there shall be hangings for the court of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long, for one side. And the pillars thereof shall be 20, and their sockets 20 of brass. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for the north side and length there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, and the pillars thereof 20, and the sockets 20 of brass, and the hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side shall be hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. And the breadth of the court on the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hangings for the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the other side, there's 3 hangings of 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court shall be a screen of 20 cubits of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen, the work of the weaver in colors, their pillars 4 and their sockets 4. And the pillars of the court ground about shall be filleted with silver, their hooks of silver and their sockets of brass. This is going to be pretty expensive. And the length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 everywhere, and the height 5 cubits of fine twined lining, fine twined linen, and their sockets of brass. All the instruments of the tabernacle in all the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass. Okay, shall we?
Why don't you finish? Yeah, go ahead and read to the end, and then we'll Well, then.
Okay.
Yeah,
And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure olive oil beaten for the light, to cause a lamp to burn continually. In the tent of meeting, without the veil,
Oh.
which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall set it in order.
Okay, David, we'll carry that on next time.
Okay.
Okay, the next time. But Gail, you had your hand up.
You know, because of this, the directions, north, south, west, a courtyard, this sounds to me like a permanent structure, not something that's portable. How can you have, if it's portable, how can it be the north, south, or west, depending on, how you turn? It sounds to me like they're building a permanent structure here, like the temple in Jerusalem, not.
Actually, with all due respect, Gail, I think they're trying to say, I think God is trying to say that no matter where this thing is, you can find north, south, east, and west. And when you pick it up and travel to another site as they're wandering, you then put it down and you still have to find north, south, east, and west. And I believe the way they did that, is by sighting on the stars at night.
No,
to get the directions.
I'm not talking about how they found the directions. What I'm saying is the courtyard is on the south side, for instance. Now, how can there be a courtyard on something that's moving? That doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe it's just a place of assembly.
Am I being dense or what?
No, not. It's a good
Let
point.
me show you a drawing from the Orthodox Torah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
That's very telling.
How can it be on the south
Yeah.
side all the time? I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
Going to have to
Yes,
find.
it does.
Yeah.
It does, because the yard has a parameter of clothes, heavy clothes going around the tabernacle. That creates the yard. Think about your house. You probably have a yard. If you want to move it to another place, you'll move the yard as well. That's what they are doing. They are not just moving the inside tabernacle. They are moving the entire thing.
I
And around the...
I understand that part. I just don't say, how can the courtyard always be on the south side if you're carrying it? That's what I'm saying.
I think that David explained to you that you can always look where the sun is coming. So we know that that's east.
You can only go in one direction. That would mean you can only go in one direction all the time, though.
No.
Not
You
really.
could go any direction,
No.
wherever you stop for the night. All right, or stop for the day.
You're saying
You would
you're
then be
orienting
able
it.
to reorient yourself to build it.
Okay, so the orientation doesn't matter when you're moving, it's only when you stop.
Right.
Okay, I see.
Right.
I got
That's
it.
all.
And no matter where you
Yeah.
move, the tabernacle, as Mary has shown us, and I have a drawing here as well, you always put it down so that certain parts are for facing the south. I mean, I think, Gail, this is a very common thing. I have a very dear friend in Canada who built a house according to astronomical dimensions, with north on one side, so that when he looks out through the glass hole on the roof of the house, it points towards Polaris, the North Star. And he actually designed his house to do that. And I thought when he did it, it was a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful thing that he actually did it both scientifically and biblically. And I think in this case, the Torah is actually following a very accurate scientific means by pointing out and insisting that wherever the temple is built, certain parts of it have to be north, others to the south. And I think that's a very important, wonderful thing. And
That-
I'm
I was
glad
just
you're bringing
concerned
this
about-
up.
I was just concerned about when it's actually being moved, that they somehow had to keep these same, compass markings. Well, that wouldn't make any sense if you're moving. But as Marty says, if once they put it down, then they orient. Then I get it.
I think that's the key. They carry it, they fold it up, but once
And
they
yeah,
settle
and the
somewhere,
fence, yeah, the fence, Gail, and the Torah explains, folded. Like when you take a tent, they folded because you see those posts, they were like that. And there is a tribe that has to fold and then to take it and put it after the tabernacle is faced, whatever it's faced. And I want to ask guys, if I am in India, where the ark is put, in what direction?
It's shifted. Okay, because it's going to point towards Jerusalem, which will be in
Right.
the west now.
On the west, yeah.
So it's interesting. Don, please, you go first, and then I wanted to mention something too. Go ahead.
There's a couple of unknowns here. First is whether north is magnetic north or true north. There's a big difference depending on where you are. And for it to be magnetic north, which is a compass direction, then you need a compass, which is a piece of magnetic material. And I'm not sure if they had that. But the other question I had is, what was the frequency that they picked up stakes and had to move this? Because it's not a trivial chore to pack up and move all that paraphernalia. And we don't really know how close they were to Canaan, which was their destination. And there's so many unknowns at this point. It's okay, the tabernacle and the ark are portable. We see that in the design, but we don't know really if it was ever moved. And
It was.
Okay, well, we don't know, and even if I couldn't find any place where the Bible actually states that it was moved from one place to another. So Gail's point about semi-permanence, at least, it's like you put a double wide down, that's where it stays, even though it's a trailer.
But Don, this was a given because we've been talking about the portability of this right from the get-go.
Yeah, but people who live in
carry
double
it
wide
with them while they're on their way.
People who live in a double wide never move. It's portable, but they never go anywhere.
Yes, it does. It
But
does.
this was
They
because
crossed
we
the
have the
desert
luxury of
40
being-
years.
Yeah,
But how far were they from Canaan at this point when they were building
far,
tabernacle?
40 years to go.
far.
Well, they were in the desert
40
40
plus years.
Yeah, but that's time. I'm asking about distance.
So
Anyway.
The other thing is that they are, Don, the other thing is that they're talking about a tent, and they even mention that it's a tent, and everybody knows that tents are portable. They also had possibly thousands of people, and if they divide the work, they could lift up the whole thing, I'd say pretty easily. It's not a problem with me, because the idea is they just can pick it up with a lot of strong people and move it along wherever they're going.
Well, it's not a problem with me either. I'm just wondering where it says in the Bible that they actually did that.
okay. Well, if you assume a tent is a portable structure, that's good enough. Just like a circus tent. Okay, it's portable. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Ruth Ann.
Marty, real quick, I have to run. I need a volunteer to be host right now. Okay, at the end, you know where it says, okay, you know where it says end at the bottom of your screen? When you click on it, it'll just say end all. So Grace, you can be host. I hope everybody got the email that I sent on Wednesday. That link is good for next week. It's good for the following week.
Okay.
It's good for the next 8 weeks, I believe, 7 or 8 weeks, something like that. So hold on to it, because I don't know, you know, with what my daughter doesn't need me. She needs mom's taxi and mom's credit card. So I'll be kind of busy. Okay.
Have a safe trip and a good.
Thank you.
Travel well.
Come back soon.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay, and
Grace.
play some Willie Nelson. Okay. Okay, I want to read something about the 4 directions.
Enjoy your trip, Ruth Ann.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you. I wanted to read something by Rabbi Hirsch. Okay. And those of you who may have the Hirsch commentary on the Torah, that it probably has this in there. In the west, the Ark of the Law stood with its cherubim cover. In the north, the table with the shewbread. In the south, the lamp with its lights. The east was turned toward the people. On that side was the entrance, and there one behind the other, in 2 different places, stood the altars, which invited the people to happy self-sacrificing, giving themselves up to the divine Torah, awaiting them in the west. We believe that we are not in error if we take the west side to represent the Torah and the presence of God that it and it alone brings about. The north side, the material life, the south, the spiritual, the east, the concrete nation, and the people of Israel invited to self-sacrificing dedication to God and his Torah. This is reminiscent of another ritual that we do at the with the celebration of booths with the lulav. Yes, Rabbi Mary. You want Rabbi Mary? Could you explain what I'm getting?
No, you go. Keep going.
Part of this on Sukkot, we take the lulav with the ekrod. Okay, both symbolic of life, but we shake it in front, in back, okay, to the right and to the left, okay, up and down, okay, all of these directions. We're not, by the way, we're not the only religion that does this. Okay,
Yeah.
the
Native American.
Sioux Nation does this. They have colors representing the different directions, okay? And their wheel or circle is depicted either on the ground, or they make wheels to symbolize the different directions. The Anasazi did the same thing, and therefore all of the Pueblo nations do it today. To this very day. They also have the symbolism of the kiva to represent the world underneath and the heavens above, the ladder that you go into the kiva, okay, and you come out of the kiva. The gods come out of the kiva, okay, the kachinas. The gods come out of the kiva on a ladder. All this symbolism is repetitious. Okay, and in many different cultures. And where is the Blarney stone? Is it above ground or is it underground? Don't you have to climb down to it? And the idea is to kiss the Blarney stone. I'll get it right, and then you come back up and out of that area. There are a lot of different cultural similarities. Even if you read books about the Stonehenge, which goes back 6,000 BC, okay, when it starts, okay, it has nothing to do with the Druids, okay, the culture that built the original Stonehenge it predates it by thousands of years, predates the Druids. But there are a lot of different religions that do this, even churches. Okay, you built it in a shape. Many of people are probably aware that churches are not built as a square; they're built in the shape of a cross. Okay, and that too has its directions. So it's not unique, but it is. There are reasons why this is done, and then astronomy comes into play here. Okay, because in ancient times, the openings to the structures were always in the east, so they would get the sunrise, and they would, by the angle of the sun, they would know when it was time to plant and when it was time to harvest. And also, there to this day, we keep finding Stonehenge-like structures throughout all of the British Isles, throughout northern France, okay, and southern France, and in part into because the Celts also inhabited certain portions of Spain, and so their culture added to Spanish culture, and it goes elsewhere. You see it in the Mayan culture, you see it in the Incan culture. It's not unique. Okay, but how we describe it for ourselves. And then think of the ecliptic, David. They knew of the planets at that time. Okay, what five planets did they know of?
They knew of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn.
Right. And could you explain the term ecliptic?
The ecliptic, yes. And the ecliptic is the line or the area of the sky that circles the sky that is where marks the paths of all the five planets. As they orbit the sun, they always follow this path, which is called the ecliptic. And I shouldn't interrupt the train of thought, because I think what Marty is saying right now is just thrilling me no end. But the other thing is about my friend Peter, who built his polar aligned North Star house. Peter is no ordinary person. He is the former national president of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. As a scientist, he is a nonpareil. But when he gets here next month, I am going to tell him that what I learned today is that his north aligned house takes its symbolism from this. And I think he's going to shock him that it did, but it does. And this describes it precisely. And I'm so pleased that we discussed it at this meeting today.
It's a fascinating part of the story. That's all I'm going to say. It's just a fascinating part of the story. And
I think so too.
As we have to remember, they were not able to see all of the planets, but they did know of the planets. And this becomes very important as when we speak about the ecliptic. It's an angle that deviates off the plane of the diameter of the Earth cut through by the equator.
Yeah.
And the ecliptic is at an angle to that. Okay. Guess the angle.
Yeah.
Marty, you know everything.
No, I don't know everything.
Yes,
I know a
you
little
do.
about certain different things and find connections. But it's 23 and a third, because that's 23 and a half degrees. Okay. The angle of the tilt of the Earth. And so
Okay, I'll make another connection. And
Yes,
the connection is that they did know, David, a lot about the stars and the horoscope, that it's created with the stars.
Yes.
And it says in the Talmud that people that worship Kochavim umazalot, stars and signs of the horoscope. So there were people in that time that did worship both. So we know that they know about it, and they are forbidden to worship that like sculptors to worship.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Talk about
Mary.
William Shakespeare.
Absolutely, Mary and Marty.
That's right.
But this goes all the way back to Genesis, which we discussed a long time ago, for signs and for seasons. That I think is the
Right.
first direct reference to the night sky. It is astrological,
Yes.
but it is based on the importance of studying the night sky, all the way back to Genesis.
Yes, it is. Very good. Thank you. That adds a lot to the discussion too. So as you see, there's more to this than what first meets the eye. Okay, that as we get into the different directions and like that. Anyway, any other comments about this before we go into the Ner Tamid? A discussion on the Ner Tamid. Maybe we should save that discussion for next week. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I just want to point out, and now I don't remember if it happened already or it's going to happen, but the tribes were arranged around the tabernacle in a certain way.
That will come.
First of all, there were 4 around the first line, then behind them again. And it was a specific side that they were arranged. So you might say, Shimon and Yehuda and Reuven, who were the older tribes, older people tribes, would be closer to the tent of meeting, and the minor ones would be by the yard. But there is a specific place, and every time that they stood there, it was on that side. They knew if it's the north or the side or the west or the sea, whatever. But that was an arrangement, Gail, on top of how you put the tabernacle. So that's a position that it's very clearly explained.
In addition to the encampment, that's also how they carried the ark. It was at the center,
Yes.
and you had a formation of, you can say, families or troops, whatever, in the front, the back, and to the right and the left sides. And they were all designated by the clans, as Rabbi Mary is talking about. So we're going to come up against this portability issue. But Don, you're very correct. And Rabbi Mary, both of you said how much work had to be put into this. And as I said earlier, we have forgotten this because of the invention of money, of currency of any sort, because we can now hire people to do all these things for us instead of us doing the work ourselves. So I think that's something to think about. Yes, Don.
A couple of weeks ago, I asked why they couldn't put some of this stuff on wheels.
And someone said, I think it was Suzanne, that says, well, they had to schlep it on sand. With wheels, they would be stuck.
Yeah. But even so, it's the effort that you put into it. It's the concept of giving of oneself. The more you put into it, the better the feeling of accomplishment. Okay, and the better feeling of unity as a result. Everybody can